This is dedicated to the homies that was down since day one. Welcome to Drop D.
Podcast with your hosts, Rob Clark and Doug Campbell.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the show. This is Quick Hits, a JFK Assassination News and Notes podcast. I'm 50% of your host, Rob Clark. And with me today, as always, the lovely and talented Mr. Doug Campbell.
The lovely and talented. Hey, man. What is shaking? What's shaking with you, buddy?
Just trying to stay afloat, buddy.
I heard that, man. I heard that. But hey, as we all are, and hey, we get to do this again, right? Dude, it's a great day. It's a beautiful day.
The highlight of my month.
I heard that, man. Mine too. And we're going to have a show. I need to tell you off the air, but next month's show will only be about 3 weeks out because I had to book the Vibe Room on the 13th, so that's when we have to record, Rob.
Well, that's good news for us and the listeners. For
us and the listeners, that's right. It's awesome news. Hey, it's fantastic, sir, to be here sitting down with you again, my good man, for more informed, in-depth historical study on the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Hey, to get started, how about a special report, dude?
Yes, breaking news.
Breaking news! Right here on Quick Hits, a JFK Assassination Research, News, and Notes podcast. What do you think about my dramatic breaking news music there, Rob? Is that pretty cool?
I love it. I love it. It sounds way better than this airplane going over my head in the background.
You're at the tropical location. Again?
I am.
Again.
I am.
Ladies and gentlemen, let it be known that Rob takes a lot of vacation because Rob gets a lot of vacation. Just, that's the way it is. Last night, right around 10 p.m. Central Standard Time, according to CNN.
While you slept.
Exactly, dude. While we slept, this is our breaking news. White House further delays disclosure of JFK assassination documents, citing COVID. This story is by Donald Judd. The White House announced late Friday that it would further postpone the release of more documents related to the 1963 assassination of President John F. Kennedy, Rob, pointing to the significant impact of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Here's my shocked face, Doug.
That there was another delay. Well, that there was another delay, or that it was blamed on COVID?
Well, both. I mean, unless everybody at the National Archives got COVID, which I doubt, the government was one of the strictest in putting into place COVID protocol. I think this is all horseshit and another delay tactic, another stalling tactic, asked of by the CIA and granted by our illustrious president, Uncle Joe.
The way I'm reading this story, Uncle Joe is not saying that we're going to get them all. I'm reading this line here. President Joe Biden issued a memo that said the National Archivist recommended he, quote, direct 2 public releases of the information that has ultimately been determined to be appropriate for release to the public. So that doesn't necessarily, the way I'm reading that is, yeah, you might get some eventually.
Yeah, I don't understand all these delays. I mean, people have lawsuits out there against the government for not disclosing this stuff. I mean, it was enacted that 25 years after the JFK Act, all the files would be released. And here we are, Doug, 4 years past the deadline, and we still don't have them all. Bullshit.
I wonder what they mean by interim release here. Did you read that part? It says the first will be a quote unquote interim release later this year, with a second, more comprehensive release in late 2022. So, well, I wonder what that means. Interim release, is that we're going to give you the list of what we're going to give you later?
Either that or a couple of bullshit,
a few
documents.
here's a few in the meantime, that are not important, but I'm disturbed by the wording of Uncle Joe's memo here. It says, that part, direct to public releases of the information that has ultimately been determined to be appropriate for release to the public.
Yeah, I think we'll get the Warren Commission documents in 2039 before we'll get all these damn things.
Boy, they just keep kicking that can down the road, don't they?
I know.
Who
Either
are they
there's
waiting?
Something there that they don't want to let out, or there's a lot that they don't want to. One or the other.
They're waiting on something. Is there somebody possibly still around that's pretty old that, look, we're just waiting on these people to, shuffle off this mortal coil?
Well, there are folks. As far as like CIA guys, George Bush is dead now, so can't blame it on him anymore.
Can't blame it on him. Not that he had anything to do with the case anyway.
Right. And but there are several key witnesses and players close to Lee Harvey Oswald who are still alive. Bill Frazier, Marina, Reeve Payne, to name three. So who knows?
There are people alive who were involved in the in secret Cuban operations in South Florida. Still,
Yeah, not many, but there's a few. There
are a few, and I'm convinced a couple of these guys know something. There's no way they can't. There's no way they can't.
I know,
but I don't know. That bothers me. Again, the information that we ultimately determine is suitable to release to you will release to you in 2022. Not will give you all of the remaining files in 2022. I think that's the way this thing's worded. Reading between the words, that's the way I'm reading it.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it.
The memo said, according to CNN, that the COVID-19 pandemic has slowed down the process of reviewing whether redactions continue to meet the quote, unquote, statutory standard. Of course, in 2019, former president game show host Donald Trump extended the deadline for the public release of the assassination files to 2021, citing, quote, identifiable harm to national security, law enforcement, or foreign affairs. But it was Lee Oswald and Lee Oswald alone.
Right. They're hiding something.
If there was nothing in that can, Rob, the bastards wouldn't keep kicking it down the road. It's that simple.
Right, and it can't just be, we don't want to give away our methods and operations and all this stuff. I mean, look, we're in a whole different age than the way things used to be done by the CIA in the 60s and the 50s and spycraft. It's a whole nother level. It's a whole nother game. People that have been with the agency back then have written books disclosing methods and operations and how they used to do things. I mean, it's no big secret, unless the United States is so, afraid to see, to let the public know once and for all how they were really operating back then. But yeah, other than that, like I said, the cat's been out of the bag for many years for those who really want to pay attention or find out the truth. But I just don't know what the big holdup is. But like I always say, there have been some interesting documents released in the past. Nothing of the smoking gun variety as of yet to prove anything one way or the other. And I doubt there will be in the future. Like I said, those documents have been long destroyed, burned, shit canned, deep sixed, whatever you want to call it. And that's just my opinion.
You're probably right. That's a lot of time to sanitize things. even though there's a lot to sanitize. But, you know me, I that's where I love, that's my study. I guess that's where my studies have been for a few years now, in those documents. And I've learned so much, over the past few years. I want them. I want to look through.
Well, yeah, like I said, a lot of interesting documents, but no smoking guns.
No smoking guns. A lot of insight.
At the end of the day, we're left to speculate as usual.
Yep. But no, there's not going to be anything like on the order of the McCone rally document, which that one's authenticity is still debated. I don't think it's probably real. I believe it's a clever forgery, probably. But nothing along those lines.
Right.
I don't think you're going to find. Unless it's something like, the Bill Harvey notes about Operation ZR Rifle, the handwritten notes about, executive action, not writing anything down, all that stuff.
Right.
Unless it's, something like that, a handwritten note, with Oswald's name, we're using this guy in New Orleans. It's going to be, something small like that. You know what I mean? I mean, something like that.
Well, Doug, it's funny you mentioned Bill Harvey's name.
Really?
You must have been reading my mind, sir.
Oh, no. Bill Harvey. I've been thinking about him a lot lately, and I'll tell you why. I'm writing I'm hoping it'll be November's The Dallas Action, and kind of going to be talking about his time in Miami in April of 1963. So, yeah, I've been thinking about Harvey a little bit.
Well, ahead of our explosive future news segment on this podcast to be coming up very soon, ahead of that, Doug.
Yeah.
I came across...
Wait, we have an explosive news segment?
News
segment. Oh, yes. Okay, yeah, okay, sorry.
You know what I'm talking about. The listeners don't yet.
I was like, I missed that production meeting. I must have been outside smoking a cigarette.
Joe Borelli knows there's something big coming up, and thank you, Joe, for the heads up on the JFK files not getting released by Biden anytime soon.
Yes, that story is less than 12 hours old as we sit here recording right now, sir. We do this early, guys. We do this early. Hell, we're up early on Saturdays when we do this. Rip snorting and ready to go, huh, Rob?
That's right.
Hell yeah. So, Bill Harvey.
I have a CIA dispatch classified
Liberty Lobby.
Yes, that will come up later too. You bastard, in the email section. This dispatch, Doug, is dated from December the 31st of 1963.
All right, so okay,
which is a good month.
New Year's Eve, about a month and 9 days, something like that.
Yeah, a good 5 or 6 weeks after the assassination. Okay, and this is from the chief of station in Rome, Bill Harvey, to Chief, WE, whatever that means.
Western Europe.
There you go.
Yep.
The report is prepared by the Office for Defense Minister Julio Andreotti concerning the type of rifle allegedly used by Lee Oswald in the assassination of President Kennedy.
From Harvey.
Yes.
From Harvey.
Yes. So it opens with this. Shortly after the assassination of President Kennedy, Defense Minister Andreotti requested the redacted service to furnish him a report covering the characteristics and possible origin of the rifle allegedly used in the assassination of President Kennedy. This report was prepared by Redacted Office and forwarded to Andreotti. We have been unable to NGR has redacted to ascertain the exact reason Andreotti requested this report or what, if any, disposition he made of it. Set out below is a translation of the report in question. Now, the report in question was made on November the 28th, 1963, 6 days after the assassination. Plenty of time to get to know the alleged murder weapon, correct? Wouldn't you say 6 days after the assassination?
Yeah, CIA knew they had a lot of info about it pretty fast, didn't they, through the FBI? I'm sure they were kept abreast of all that.
Oh, yeah. So here is the information set out below from the report. Number one, as regards articles appearing recently in the Italian and foreign press concerning the presumed use of an Italian-made rifle in the slaying of President Kennedy, the following comments are made.
Presumed use.
Yeah. 2, the weapon which appears to have been employed in this criminal attack is a Model 91 rifle, 7.35 caliber, 1938 modification.
Well, that's interesting.
Now, Doug, keep that in mind, sir.
Already, yes, sir. Duly noted.
File that away.
Duly noted.
The description of a, quote, Mannlicher-Carcano rifle in the Italian and foreign press is in error. The Model 91 Italian rifle is actually of Austrian origin and is derived from the Steyr brand of carbine. The, quote, Mannlicher is a Hungarian rifle whose clip loader was adopted for the Italian Model 91. Okay. Carcano was a senior technician in the Tierney Army weapons plant,
right?
Who,
yeah,
in 1890, made the certain changes in the original Austrian model from which the Italian, quote, Model 91 rifle is derived. In brief, the Model 91 is a result of the combination of ideas taken from various types of foreign weapons, Mannlicher loader, Steyr model, Mauser bolt, etc. The weapons mentioned by the foreign press are varied. The model indicated by Lunita seems to be an Italian 6.5 Model 91 as modified in 1941. It is not known if this was the type of weapon used for the crime. Now, this is 6 days after the crime.
All right, Model 41. Which is the one that Oswald actually ordered, the 41 or the 39?
I believe it was the 39.
Okay. Which was, now you know the details of this way better than me. And we'll probably talk about this again later, but the one that Oswald actually, did he check the box on the order form or wrote it in? Which one? I don't even know.
Yeah, I think he ordered the Model 91 7.35 caliber rifle, and it says the photographs from American sources appearing in the Italian press show another type of weapon. Now, what they're saying was that they're saying that it seems to be an Italian 6.5 Model 91 as modified in 1941. It is not known if this was the type of weapon used for the crime. It says the photographs from American sources appearing in the Italian press show another type of weapon, a 7.35 caliber Model 91 as modified in 1938. In any event, the telescopic sight fixed to the rifle is not of Italian origin and was never fixed to the weapon in Italy. In 1958, the Italian military authorities decided to eliminate all the Model 91s, the 6.5 and the 7.35 calibers of various types which were no longer being issued and which were declared obsolete. The Army Artillery Command and the Air Force Arms and Munitions Command agreed together to dispose of all such weapons on the basis of regular bidding. The Navy acted independently and in February of 59 turned over to the Pietro Beretta arms plant of Gardone, Valtrompia, Brescia on an exchange basis about 26,000 6.5 caliber Model 91 rifles which were exported by Beretta to the United States between August and November of 1960. The consignee being the Comier Creation of New York. The rifles put up for sale by the Army Artillery Command consisted of some 570,000 serviceable and unserviceable weapons. 3 American firms bid competitively for them: Adam, Interarmco, and Sidem International. After difficult negotiations and numerous problems, Adam Consolidated Industries of New York was given the contract in April of 1960, and it began to take delivery of these weapons. The Adam Company, through its Italian legal representative, lawyer Alberto Bonasco, had these rifles modified by the Riva d'Astoro Laboratory, Trento, shortening the rifle barrels or replacing the short rifle barrels with longer ones, and making certain other minor changes designed to make the weapon more acceptable to the American public. This firm took delivery of some 100,000 rifles, which were shipped at intervals to the United States and put on the open market through normal commercial channels. The Adam firm did a good deal of advertising to bring these weapons to the attention of the public in America, where the sale of such arms for hunting or target shooting is uncontrolled and is normally accomplished through large chain stores. The weapons were sold to the Adam Company at an average price of $2.20 for serviceable 6.5 rifles, $1.10 for unserviceable 6.5 rifles, $4.50 for serviceable 7.35 rifles, and $2 for unserviceable 7.35 rifles. In the United States, the sales prices to the buyer ran from a minimum of $9.95 to a maximum of $29.95 per rifle.
Wow. Wow. Let's
yeah.
hang on, man. There's a calculator. Keep going. You keep going. I'm gonna calculate what that comes out to nowadays. Go ahead.
All right. The first lot of 7,000 Model 91s, which Adam put on the market, had disastrous results. Many of them burst, with frequently fatal consequences, and many didn't fire at all. This forced Adam to withdraw all the rifles from sale and check them before putting them back on the market. After taking delivery of 100,000 rifles, the Adam Company, with various excuses, did not accept any more. As a result, litigation is now in process between the firm and the Italian military authorities for breach of contract. The Klein Company, International Firearms, and Globe Firearms, mentioned by Lunita, have never made direct purchases of weapons in Italy. It is not to be ruled out, however, that they obtained some lots of Italian rifles from Adam for sale in the American and Canadian markets. The service has 2 samples of the weapons which the Adam Company placed on the American market. All the weapons sold to the Adam Company are ordinary repeating rifles. Normally, each piece shows its serial number, year of manufacture, and the words "Made in Italy," required by the Adam Company, or the name of the manufacturer: Army Weapons Plant at Tierney, Army Weapons Plant at Gardone Valtrompia, National Arms Factory at Brescia, and the P. Beretta Arms Plant. It should be pointed out that between 1935 and 1945, many tens of thousands of Model 91 rifles of Italian origin disappeared in East Africa, North Africa, Spain, Greece, Yugoslavia, Russia, and elsewhere. Most of these rifles were brought up by the local population, and even the governments of various countries made sales of which the Italian authorities have no knowledge. In the past few days, a number of journalists from communist newspapers have visited the Tierney Arms Plant and tried to obtain information on the sale of weapons abroad. They were given no information, and the management of the plant informed the central military authorities. It is suggested that you may desire to pass copies of this report to OD Envy and to OD Foam. A copy has been made available to the OD Envy representative here for his information, and with the vice that it has been forwarded to Washington.
So a whole lot of those Tierney weapons disappeared in East Africa in, what year was that?
From 1931 to 1941.
Okay. So, you were saying?
Yes.
No, I interrupted you there. You said so, and then I was rude. I interrupted your thought. Go ahead, man.
Oh, no, I was just saying so you could start talking.
Oh. We haven't done this in about 6 weeks, guys.
That was indicating the end of this dispatch from Bill Harvey.
From Bill Harvey. There's some interesting information in there.
Yeah, in Western Europe. I guess his boss. About
the Tierney rifles. The Tierney Carcanos.
The most important information Doug gleaned from this,
yes.
I believe.
Yes.
Is the fact that the weapon appears to have been employed in this criminal attack as a Model 91 rifle, 7.35 caliber, 1938 modification.
Right.
And the description of it being a Mannlicher-Carcano is in error. And that the photographs from American sources appearing in the Italian press show another type of weapon, a 7.35 caliber Model 91, as modified in 1938, and not the alleged murder weapon, the 6.5 millimeter Carcano that was found in the Texas School Book Depository and attributed.
So I wonder which photos he's talking about.
Harvey Oswald.
Is he talking about the backyard photos? You know, the photos he's talking about in the Italian press. I mean,
I'm sure. I believe the backyard photo was out that quick because it was on the cover of Life magazine not too long after the assassination, and it was on the cover of that French magazine. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, see, but Bill Harvey's telling him that the murder weapon, that weapon they're showing in the Italian press, the Oswald weapon isn't a Mannlicher-Carcano. Is that what he's saying?
Yeah, he said it's a 7.35.
Oh, he's saying it's a different. It's a 7.35 and not a 6.5. Not that it's not a Mannlicher.
Correct. Like in the backyard photos.
Yeah.
Not the rifle found in the depository.
Which appears to be a different rifle than than the rifle in the backyard photos, right?
That's what we're saying. Yes.
That's what we're saying.
Yes.
And the backyard photo rifle appears to be a 7.35 millimeter Carcano.
Exactly.
Which is what Oswald actually ordered.
Exactly. And what we're about to talk about.
And which recently turned up. The kind of rifle that recently turned up.
Let's just get into it right now, buddy.
All right, guys. On October 7th, a gentleman named Paul C. Tash, the chairman and CEO of Times Publishing Company in Tampa, Florida, published an opinion piece related to our first topic of the show, which is the upcoming release or non-release of the JFK Assassination Files. And the title of this article is "A Florida Tie to the JFK Assassination Shows Why Secret Records Need Releasing." And it's all about, ladies and gentlemen, a new historical artifact that may have turned up. It's certainly, Rob, a historical artifact of the time and the place and the people that we study. The secret Cuban War in South Florida.
Most definitely.
If nothing else, it's a historical artifact from that time, from those operations, from those people. All right?
Yes.
And this, guys, is an article focusing on the stepsons of a character that is familiar to a lot who study the assassination, and that is Loran Eugene Hall. And that's what we have here, guys. New revelations regarding Loran Hall. Now, I woke up, Rob, on October 9th, and this article was in my inbox from Mr. Ted, okay, 2 days after... 2 days after it was
mine
written.
too.
Yours too, yeah, from Ted Rubenstein, our buddy out there in California. I want to read a little bit of this.
Well, I got mine from Uncle Dave, but he got his from Ted too. So.
Oh, well, that's just Ted, man. That's a service he provides for his friends, that kind of thing. I want to read a little bit of this article for everybody, if I may, sir. Mr. Tash writes, like almost everyone of a certain age, Jim Pappas remembers clearly how and when he learned that President John F. Kennedy had been murdered in Dallas. Pappas would go on to become the dean of the University of South Florida's business school and is retired in Tampa now. But on that day, Pappas was a sophomore at UCLA attending a lecture in anthropology. Somebody walked in with a note for the professor who announced the news. Pappas's first reaction was not grief or fear or disbelief, but instead an urgent question. Oh, hell, where's Skip? And Skip, of course, guys, is Loran Hall.
Yes.
Loran Hall. Skip was the nickname, Mr. Tash writes, for Loran Hall Sr., who was married to Pappas's mother. He was a soldier of fortune, prominent in the Free Cuba paramilitary forces, trying to overthrow the government of Fidel Castro. Weeks after Kennedy was murdered, Skip came to Jim's younger brother John with a rifle. It was a Carcano, an Italian military carbine made at the same factory as the one that killed the president. And guys, the Pappas brothers still have this rifle. When Hall handed over the rifle, he told his stepson to put it away, forget about it, and never speak of it again. For 57 years, he's kept that secret. This past spring, however, he started talking with his brother about the rifle, and together they approached me, and that's Mr. Tash, with their suspicion that their mother's husband was part of a plot to murder the president. Now, that's the big blockbuster news there, guys. And I guess we should, for those who might not be familiar, or refresher for everybody, we need to talk about Loran Hall and who he was and all of his connections to the case. Or that would be a 5-hour show, Rob, if we did that.
Yes, most definitely. But we can shorten it up a bit.
Interpin. He ran with Hemming and Hall, and Hargraves and Howard, Vidal Santiago. He was until the time he joined Castro. He went down and joined the Cuban Revolution. He's one of those guys that went down, an American, an adventurer, mercenary, joined Castro. Batista is overthrown. Castro turns communist. Well, he turns anti-Castro. He's jailed in Cuba, spends months in a Cuban prison. His cellmate...
with Santos Trafficante.
That's right. His cellmate was the mafia don that ran Florida, Santo Trafficante, in a Cuban prison. He was involved in Operation Tilt, the Biopoli affair. He was close with General Edwin Walker. He knew Edwin Walker well. Who didn't he know?
Close to John Martino.
Very close to John Martino.
Talked about money being passed from Sam Giancana.
From Sam Giancana. At Martino's house. If you read his House Select Committee on Assassinations testimony, Loran Hall speaks of a meeting in April of 1963 to plan to pull the wool over CIA's eyes, come up with a bullshit story so CIA will help them get a team into Cuba with John Martino, John Rosselli, Santo Trafficante, and Eddie Bayo, Eduardo Perez, the Bayo from the Biopoli affair. He knew all these people. He was in these circles, these same circles. He passed through New Orleans all the time. Loran Hall is in the Warren Report.
Yeah.
He's in the Warren Report.
He was arrested in Dallas in mid-October of 1963 with a trailer full of guns.
And a bunch of amphetamines. But, J. Edgar, which he always denied, but J. Edgar Hoover used Loran Hall to try to explain away the Odio incident in the Warren Report. I mean, he's actually in there. J. Edgar Hoover said he thought it was Loran Hall and some of his buddies visiting Sylvia Odio in late September while Oswald is allegedly in Mexico City. But there's so much about this guy. I have thought for years, Rob, I have been convinced that Loran Hall is a linchpin to what happened in Dallas, that he knew, that he was involved. I've always thought this. And now here we find out that a few weeks after the assassination, he gives his stepson a rifle to put away, hide, and forget. And it's a Mannlicher-Carcano rifle. But here's the thing, guys. Rob, it's a 7.35 built in the Tierney plant, the Tierney, Italy Armory.
It's a 7.35 Model 91 built in the Tierney plant. The same rifle that Oswald ordered. The same rifle that Bill Harvey says is in the actual pictures from before the assassination. So,
and it is aftermarket now. It is drilled and tapped to mount a telescopic sight.
A scope. And I don't mean a little one.
No, there's 4 tap holes in the top of this thing.
Yes.
Yeah. 4. And
4.
that's, see, then ironically, Loran Hall and rifles. That the chapter that I contributed to Gail Nix Jackson's book, Pieces of the Puzzle, JFK Assassination Research book, guys, it was published back in 2017, I believe, is called The Gunrunner. My contribution to that book was about Loran Hall and a crazy story about a mysterious disappearing rifle. Right? In January, we'll recount this now for everybody that may not have heard this story. It's not a story, it's true. Right? Him and Hemming, Jerry Hemming, they're out in California trying to raise money for these Cuban raids from these John Birchers out there. And they run out of money. They need money to get home. So Hemming's got this high-powered, really, really, really expensive. It is the opposite, dude, of a Mannlicher-Carcano rifle. It is a Johnson 30-06. It's like around $1,000 new in 1963. High-powered. And it had, I'm not a ballistics guy, but you know how, you tell me if this is true. I may even be talking out of my ass here, dude. But the OD, the outside diameter of some barrels is thicker than like just a normal hunting rifle. Is that what they call subsonic? Something like that. The outside diameter of the barrel is thicker for a reason, like accuracy. I don't know.
I think subsonic refers to the speed of the trajectory bullet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm talking out of my ass there. But anyway, this is a Johnson 30-06 rifle. They pawn it in L.A. to a private detective named Richard Hathcock, and they go back across the country. This is in January of 63, back to Florida. Well, Loran Hall is in Lawrence Howard, the other Interpin mercenary. We've talked about him. You remember, Rob? And I think in the last episode we talked about him and L.J. Delsa, didn't we? Just 1 or 2 episodes ago. Him and the House Select Committee on Assassinations investigator. Yeah. Well, they're in L.A. and Hall is loaded up this trailer full of guns, right? He's running guns across the country to the Cuban exiles. And they go behind Hemming's back and get this rifle out of pawn. Then they go to Dallas to drop the trailer load of guns. And from that, the Johnson rifle never made it back to Miami. They did. They dropped the trailer load of guns and they went back to Miami. And then Hall and William Seymour came back to Dallas to get the guns. At that point, that's when they got popped and arrested for amphetamine possession, only to get kicked loose 5 hours later. No harm, no foul. Go home, guys. See ya. which
After
I'm always
talking to local police, FBI, an agent named Hosty, and somebody who Hall thinks was with the CIA.
Yeah, he said the guy said I'm with CIA is what he told the HSCA, and Hall said I told him to stick it in his ass, and he left. And then he gets kicked loose, and they go pick up their guns, and they go on back to Miami But again, this Johnson 30-06 didn't make it to Miami. However, on the morning of Saturday, November 23rd of 1963, at 10:30 a.m. Los Angeles time, which was Dallas is Central Time, right? So that's 2 hours. So at 10:30, it's less than 24 hours since Kennedy has been shot. The FBI knocks on the door of the Allied International Detective Agency, the people that were holding this rifle for Hemming, knocked on their door in the morning and asked those dudes 3 questions. When's the last time you saw Loran Hall? Were you in Dallas yesterday? And why are your fingerprints all over a certain Johnson 30-06 rifle? Now, Rob, it's always been my contention that unless the FBI had that rifle and had found it in Dallas, they wouldn't be asking those questions of those gentlemen. Were you in Dallas? We have your fingerprints on a rifle. They wouldn't even ask those questions if that rifle had not been found in Dallas. You know what? That's always been my opinion about Loran Hall and that rifle. What do you think?
Well, there is another possibility.
Okay.
Now, albeit slim, but there is another possibility that Jerry Hemming tipped off the feds because he got tipped off that his buddy Skip had picked his rifle up.
Well, he did.
And he quickly put 2 and 2 together and figured, I'm going to throw this son bitch under the bus.
Well, he did. He reported that and a .22 Jungle carbine stolen by Hall.
Right.
Yeah.
In Miami. But if he called the feds right after the assassination and said, hey, you might want to check out this guy and this rifle. This is where I left it. You can track it down from there.
That is possible. Absolutely. But, you know, he did report it stolen. But I see what you're saying. Yeah. He actually said he called Lester Logue, who was that oil geologist in Miami that was a big bircher, you know, a big friend of theirs, donor. And according to Hemming, he called Logue up and said, hey, Loran Hall is in Dallas and he has my rifle. So he kind of was sort of dropping a dime on him in a way, huh?
Yeah.
But the
question is why?
And another thing about Loran Hall, guys, he was given full and complete blanket immunity to testify to the House Select Committee on Assassinations in 1978. Full immunity. Under oath. He could have walked in there and said, I pulled the trigger on his head, and they couldn't have touched him because he had a signed legal binding immunity agreement. He could have told him anything, Rob. And he walked in and he sat down. The first question out of the gate was, Mr. Hall, where were you on November 22nd, 1963? And Loran Hall said, I would like to invoke my Fifth Amendment protections against self-incrimination. He had immunity and pled the Fifth on where he was on November 22nd, right. 1963. And then, look, if you don't think that makes the dude look guilty of something, the next thing that happened was that they read him the Riot Act. They got out their immunity agreement that he signed and read it to him. And they read especially the part, here's the part, Mr. Hall, where it says, we can put you in jail if you refuse to answer having signed this immunity agreement. So they read that to him. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. Okay, let's do this again, Mr. Hall. Where were you on November 22nd, 1963? And Hall says, I was at home shaving in Monterey Park, California, and my wife called me at home and told me the president had been shot. And I know what y'all are thinking. And I know what Rob's thinking. But nobody questioning him that day thought to ask, Mr. Hall, what is it about that that's so incriminating? You know, what is it about standing in your boxer shorts, shaving in Monterey Park, California at the time that made you want to invoke your Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination 2 minutes ago? You know, you get the feeling that he was just trying to think of something.
Yeah.
But yeah, this guy, Loran Hall, gave his stepson a Mannlicher-Carcano from Tierney, 7.35 millimeter, which, as Rob has pointed out, seems to be the rifle that Oswald actually thought he was going to get in the mail, if you believe he actually ordered it. You know what I mean? It's not the one he got, allegedly.
Right.
Yeah. But this one is, and according to, I looked around a little bit, Rob, 94,500 7.35 millimeter model 1938 rifles were shipped to Finland, where they were known as Tierney carbines. So they were primarily used by security and line of communications troops during the Winter War of 39 to 40 something. I don't know. I chopped that off there, but there is accompanying this article, there's a great photograph of the breech of the gun there with the Tierney seal and the little crown emblem that designates where the rifle was actually made. Let me read a little bit more of this, Rob. It says, weeks after the president's assassination, John Pappas recalls Skip brought a rifle to him. Considering all the guns that Skip had, this one did not seem obviously valuable or special. John, take this rifle. Pappas says Loran Hall told him, put it away, don't touch it, forget it, don't talk about it. And when John asked, what's this all about? Hall replied, you'll know. Months after he handed over that rifle to his stepson, Skip told John something else about the assassination. There were two people on the grassy knoll where witnesses said they saw a shooter. One was there to kill JFK. The other was there to make it happen. And that's interesting. Did we lose Rob?
No, I'm here. I was just trying to put off these fire engines and let you talk. But
fire engines in the tropics? Well, they got them down there too, don't they?
Yeah, palm trees catch on fire.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's right. It's hot down there, man.
It is.
Again, Rob takes a lot of vacation because he gets a lot of vacation. So go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
So just to give you all an idea of the type of scope that was mounted on this rifle that Mr. Pappas was given by Skip Hall, Oswald's, in quotes, 6.5 millimeter Carcano scope, which was I believe, Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's a 10 power scope, which means it magnified things by 10 times the magnification.
Yeah, it wasn't a very powerful one.
Right, and it was fastened to the rifle by 3 tap holes.
Now, as in contrast, the scope that was mounted on the Johnson 30-06, by all reports, was a 40 power Bushnell scope. Pretty fancy one.
Yes, much bigger. The holes are very much more spaced out than the ones on Oswald's Carcano. There's 3 that I talk about. The first 2 are very close together, and the third one is about an inch away. And the ones from the Loran Hall rifle appeared to be evenly spaced out by at least in between all 4 tap holes, would allow you to mount a pretty damn good scope on this shitty rifle.
A better one anyway.
Yeah, a better one anyway, for sure. So, you hear this story and you hear these things and your mind starts to race, Doug. Okay.
Yep.
Hall gives his son a 7.35 millimeter Carcano Italian-made rifle, a couple weeks after the assassination. Bill Harvey alleges that the actual murder weapon was a 7.35 Italian-made Carcano, and not the 6.5.
Right.
We have the 7.35 being the rifle that was actually ordered by Oswald, not the one he got, allegedly. So this sets your mind racing, okay? And then you put that together with what Hall says about two people on the grassy knoll, a shooter, and another person making sure that the shooter shot.
Yeah.
Then you think of things like the deaf mute Ed, what's his face?
Ed Hoffman.
Ed Hoffman, and what he said he saw going on behind the grassy knoll after the assassination.
He had a shooter who then tossed the weapon to somebody, just pulled the trigger and tossed the weapon. Is that the way that went?
Broke it down immediately, yep.
The second guy broke it down,
the
right?
Trunk, and they got the hell out of there.
Yeah, but isn't that, now, if I'm remembering correctly, the shooter fired and tossed the weapon, second guy broke it down.
That's correct.
Yeah. Well, there you go. There's two people.
There's two people. We call one a spotter, one a shooter.
Yep.
Lauren Hall can call him the guy who made sure that the shot was taken. However you want to take that. I don't think it would have taken much for an anti-communist idealist to pull the trigger on Kennedy. Someone who was upset with his policies towards Castro and Cuba and the whole Bay of Pigs thing, who would have been rightly upset about the way that whole thing was handled, the way Castro was handled, the way the Bay of Pigs was handled, and the way communism was handled, albeit Russia and Cuba together by President Kennedy, all of which would have made an anti-communist very, very upset. So idealistically, I've always said, Doug, that the shooter had to be motivated by one of two reasons, or both, and that is money or idealism. And if you combine both, you've got somebody who really just doesn't care about pulling that trigger and killing the United States president in broad daylight in the midst of hundreds of people watching on.
Rob, do you want to give the listeners a little taste of Loran Hall's idealism in regard to Cuba and Castro?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Let's hear it, guys. Let's see if I can pull this off.
Cuba
here.
On vacation.
Here we go. This is Loran
I am a Cuban
Hall.
freedom fighter. I am here bringing to the American people a two-part message. Number one, to tell a story of what I saw, lived, and breathed concerning Cuba and the actions of our government. Number two, to try to awaken the mass of citizens of the United States to the treacherous dealings in which our government has betrayed not only the Cubans, but each and every American. I became involved in the revolution in Cuba when I, by chance, went to Havana, Cuba, on vacation. I became acquainted with a 15-year-old bellhop at the St. John Hotel. He, in turn, took me to Camilo Cienfuegos, who was a commandant movement, which was the movement headed by Fidel Castro. I then became a captain in the revolution, and when the revolution was over, and we were on our way down to Havana, the rapings of women, of innocent people from trees. I've witnessed people laying in the streets with their heads bashed in from rifle butts given to these people through the militia, or at that time, the rebel army. Then I witnessed the 18,000 Cuban children between the ages of 12 and 16 that were sent to Russia and Czechoslovakia for the purpose of going through a 4-year communist indoctrination school. Then there was the agrarian reform. The agrarian reform plan was a plan to which to supposedly give to each campesino or workman that would be their own loads of that were arrived.
Wow, that's a real Skippy record there. But guys, this is a speech you can find on YouTube. Mr. Loran Hall. It was a speech he gave to the John Birch Society. He used to speak at a lot of the same dinners as did General Edwin Walker, the man that Lee Harvey Oswald.
Carlos Brignier. Yes.
Yeah, and Carlos Brignier, the man that, ironically enough, the official story tells us that Lee Harvey Oswald tried to assassinate in April of 1963 with Mannlicher-Carcano.
Right.
Let's see if we can. I skipped ahead, Rob. You want to see if we can listen to Mr. Hall? We can catch him saying something particularly interesting, maybe. Let's try it out here.
Sure. Yeah.
Kennedy type and Eisenhower type citizen.
Oh, here we go. Let me back this up.
Taken the oath of allegiance. Therefore, I could lose my citizenship. However, he felt that if I became a good citizen and did not criticize the actions of my government in Cuba and the actions of my government elsewhere, and would not give the information out about what I had seen or done in Cuba, that he felt that there would be no action taken to take my citizenship away from me. So for the next 2.5 years, I became a real good Kennedy-type and Eisenhower-type citizen. Not a very good American, but a real good citizen. When I would hear from my Cuban friends, either by telephone or by telegram, letter, or in person, I'd feel a little sick to my stomach because I knew that I wasn't treating them right or doing right by them or my own country. And then I read a quote from Abraham Lincoln, and I felt that it fit me to a T. And I quote, "To sin by silence when they should protest makes cowards out of men." I talked it over with my wife many a times about going back to Cuba or about going down into Florida and training Cubans for the purpose of invading Cuba. And then I read a quote from Teddy Roosevelt, and I quote, "I do the things I believe ought to be done, and when I make up my mind, I act." So I acted. I left for Miami, Florida, and when I arrived, I was absolutely amazed and appalled at the conditions that exist in Miami. I talked to groups that told me of being paid $200 to $250 a month by the Central Intelligence Agency to do nothing. I talked to other groups that had been given guns and boats and equipment by the CIA and ordered to do nothing until they are ordered to go into Cuba. These same people have been sitting in Miami, Florida for the last 2 years. All combat Cuban groups are restricted to Dade County, Florida. Any Cuban who is a member of a Cuban freedom fighter group is restricted to Dade County. And if they leave Dade County, they can be arrested and can be deported to Cuba. If these men are deported to Cuba, it's absolutely instant death. Don't say that Kennedy can't do it or won't do it because he set a precedent not long ago when he sent Perez Jimenez back to Venezuela.
And you know who Perez Jimenez was, Rob, right?
I do.
Yeah, my friend Monica Perez Jimenez's father. That's right.
Yes.
Marita Lorenz's ex
lover.
Yeah. They never got married. I don't think so. I don't know, but
that audio from Loran Hall should give everybody a really good snapshot of the mindset of this guy. You know, he's basically saying, look, they were anti-Castro Cubans. They were freedom fighters paid by the CIA to sit in Florida and do nothing. Do nothing.
Ordered to do nothing. And now this guy,
the biopoly raid, he tried several times, running guns down. He tried raids on Cuba. None of it ever worked. None of it.
I think.
So what's the alternative, Doug? Can you get something done in your own country to open up the eyes to the plight that you deem to be a very important issue without having to go offshore. Take care of the problem here at home.
That's right. And can you imagine if you're as angry and as idealistically foaming at the mouth as Loran Hall was in 1963 with these John Birchers about Cuba and about communism and about Castro, as mad and angry as he was, imagine if you are a paramilitary Cuban exile who was trained by the CIA and then immediately sent to Army Ranger School and then immediately turned around and sent to Navy SEAL School. And you go and you get to make one infiltration and exfiltration into Cuba, and the Kennedys shut everything down. Imagine you're that guy, a bona fide operational paramilitary tactical badass, and you're a Cuban exile and you're shut down.
And you're double-crossed by Castro for something you believed in, and you thought you were doing something right, and you were double-crossed.
And then once you're here and once you're given that training and those weapons and the money and the networks are set up and you're promised this, then it's all taken away from you. It's the rug's pulled out from under you by who? Robert Kennedy's Justice Department. And you're confined to Miami. And you're told to do nothing. You're threatened with prison time. This happened March 31st, April 1st of 1963, when the Kennedys pretty much put the moratorium on it, and they confined these guys. It was a curfew. It was whatever county you're in is your residence. Don't let us catch you out of there. You will go to prison, and then you will be deported if you run these raids. And, that's what I'm saying, as pissed off as Hall is. Can you imagine if you're somebody like Felipe Vidal Santiago from Cuba, the Diaz-Lanz brothers?
Any of these guys.
Yeah. I mean,
and they all have connections to very big money. I mean, we're talking Santos Traficante, Sam Giancana, CIA black funding, black money, off the book stuff.
Manuel Arteme's M-World thing, which was the blackest of the black at that time. I mean,
right.
That particular operation. We can talk about the Black Nine, those guys from that operation that got snuck out of here on boats on, last day of November, first day of December in the hull of ships.
You get a couple of these idealistic guys together, the money to pull it off and make it happen, and, the knowledge that, okay, after this is over, I'll be okay. And like I've pointed out before in several shows, after Kennedy's assassinated, these cowboy raids pretty much stopped, at least from most of the major players, that we can associate with the Kennedy assassination, Howard and Hemming and Hall. Now, I believe Hargraves was still trying to raid Cuba up into the 70s, but I don't know what the hell he was doing.
Howard ended up training in Honduras and Guatemala. Lawrence Howard, I mean. Hemming was involved in different kinds of intrigue in jungle countries for years and years. Countries with big jungles for years and years and years. Anti-communist stuff. I heard Hemming say one time as a joke, "Yeah, I've been involved in urban renewal since 1958." It actually made me chuckle. I'm sorry. Probably not real funny, but yeah, I totally get what you're saying. Hargraves continued it, and he was still acting pretty crazy for a while. But by the time of the Garrison investigation, a little later, most of these guys who were involved in those Cuban ops had moved into narcotics trafficking. Quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, it can all be tied together. I mean, these guys are running back and forth between the West Coast, Texas, New Orleans, and Florida. And what do we keep finding out and studying things in the Kennedy assassination? There's ties to Dallas, to New Orleans, to Florida, to all these key players. And to take it back to the article, a couple weeks after the assassination, here is Loran Hall handing off a 7.35 millimeter Carcano to his son and telling him to forget about it. That someday he would know.
Someday he would figure it out.
Now, that day is now 58 years later. But I think it's awesome that stuff like this is still coming out. And it's stuff like this that could finally help shed light on the truth of what happened that day in Dallas.
Well, this is amazing to me because, just let's, what it might be. That's one thing, right? And, that it's almost like it might be the thing, of which we dare not speak. You know what I mean? It's like I don't even want to go there speculating that this might be what it might be. You know what I'm saying?
Right. But if it was,
we're both thinking. But it's also, as historical artifacts go, when you think of the time and who it came from, and when the things we study that we have to learn about in context, these operations and these people to study the Kennedy assassination, to me it's fascinating from that standpoint too. This is a historical artifact from that time period, from those operations, from those weapons shipments. The point was brought up to me by somebody else that the cool thing about this rifle, that it would be amazing because as far as this person knew, this researcher, John Thomas Mason, at least up until 10 years ago, was still alive in Texas somewhere, right? How amazing would it be to get this rifle in his hand, to look at those tapped, drilled holes for mounting a scope and say, Mr. Mason, did you do that? Is that your work? Is this one of the rifles you sold to the Cubans? And according to this friend of mine, that would be huge. And guys, that was Larry Hancock that said that to me. That if this turned out to be one of the Carcanos that John Thomas Mason modified and sold to the Cubans, fixed up, then that could be huge.
Yeah, and Doug, let's go back to speculation for a little bit. I believe we talked about this off the air, but when you actually think about it, this is pretty ingenious, and it even kind of still worked out, even though somebody might have fucked up along the way and planted the wrong rifle in the schoolbook depository.
Yeah.
When you are analyzing, okay, say this rifle that Hall gave his son was used on the grassy knoll to execute the president.
Hypothetically, this is the grassy knoll weapon.
Yes.
Or possibly...
Say it is.
Say possibly South Knoll even.
Now, a 7.35 Carcano bullet highly resembles a 6.5 millimeter Carcano bullet, and the ammunition is likely manufactured in the same facility made up of the same alloys. It's just a different size.
Agreed.
So we have bullet fragments from quote Carcano bullet, found in President Kennedy and in the limousine. You can't really tell without having a whole intact bullet whether or not it came from a 7.35 or a 6.5. We're talking millimeters. We're talking
you're talking about like
millimeters difference.
The tiny fragments.
Nothing.
The tiny fragments.
Yeah, it's nothing. You're not going to know whether or not it came from a 7.35 or a 6.5.
There's no way to compare lands and grooves, ballistic lands and grooves on a specimen like that.
No. So whoever planted the Carcano in the schoolbook depository and the spent casings and the intact bullet allegedly recovered from a stretcher at Parkland Hospital that ties everything back to the rifle found in the depository. Maybe that rifle was supposed to have been what Oswald ordered, a 7.35, and somebody screwed up and put a 6.5 in there. Maybe that's all they could get their hands on, or maybe that's what they had.
Yeah.
But it really wouldn't be much of a difference in the ammunition. I'm talking the bullet fragments, the makeup, the chemical makeup.
Yeah. The metallurgy of the whole thing. Absolutely. Yeah. It wouldn't be much of a difference. You couldn't tell whether
the fragment came from a 7.35 or a 6.5. You couldn't do it.
Oh no. I've seen. If you look at like X-rays of bullet fragments in a bullet path, they're microscopic. I mean, some of them are really, really, really small, and there would be no way to tell the difference, would there?
Well, even if you had a mushroom deformed chunk of lead,
yeah,
how the hell could you tell the difference? You couldn't.
Nope.
You couldn't, unless you had an intact bullet, i.e. the stretcher bullet.
Right.
To say, okay, well, here, this is a 6.5 Mannlicher-Carcano bullet. It matches the 6.5 Mannlicher-Carcano rifle found in the depository. The case is open and the case is shut.
Case closed. Fuck you, Posner.
But there's a reason.
Yeah.
If Loran Hall had a 7.35 Carcano on the knoll, it's because that's the rifle Oswald allegedly ordered earlier in 1963. So Did he actually get a 7.35 rifle? Is this the one he posed for in the backyard photographs? But it definitely is not the one found in the depository, people.
I want to see where, I tell you what I'd love to see is if there's a ring for a sling mount on the Loran Hall Carcano and where it's at. Is it closer to what's in the backyard photo? Because the sling mount on the depository weapon and the backyard photo weapon are different, correct? They're in a different place on the rifle.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. It's not even the same sling mount, guys. Come on. Yeah.
Some people say it's not even the same scope.
Yeah, now that I haven't examined as hard, but it is a little piece of shit 10 power scope. Right? And the mounting is completely different than the way this Loran Hall rifle is drilled. But
and we have posited too, Doug, that the reason why there is no scope on this rifle is because it would have been a good, decent scope.
Right.
You don't throw a good, decent scope away and tell your son to hide this shit. Don't just forget about it. That
went on a workbench, in an equipment bag, on another rifle.
You can put
something,
that scope on another rifle. You can use it. It's got nothing that's going to tie it back to that Carcano unless you match it up to the tap holes. But that's a lot of speculation and effort there.
Yeah.
So, it's not unlikely if there was a sling on Loran Hall's rifle, it would have been taken off. A good sling is a good sling. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Good scope.
Especially the scope. One that would require 4 mounting screws spaced out so evenly tells me it was a weighty scope as well.
Yes. Stout.
Yeah. And you know what? As far as that depository rifle goes, I don't even want to hear. People can, oh my God, the 6.5. I mean, he put it together with a dime, they say. And then he sighted it in perfectly. He sighted it in somehow after putting it back together with a dime and made sure the iron sights and everything lined up with his scope and all that. And, he was such a great marksman. He missed with that first shot, Doug, but he made the necessary adjustments on the second and third shot. Bullshit. Right. Yeah. But, the little screws where the rifle's broke down, you put it back together, the little screws. If you think he did that and that rifle was sighted in enough for any kind of accuracy, and maybe you don't know what sighting in a rifle means, but if you're out there spewing that bullshit, you don't know anything about rifles. That didn't happen. You know, that didn't happen. I mean, it takes somebody that knows what they're doing to sight one in after it's been put together. It's not instantaneous by any means, a rifle like that. No. But, you know, Rob, I thought about the scope mount on the Loran Hall rifle. You've stood behind the fence on the grassy knoll, right?
Yes.
Is there any need for a scope?
Nope. But if you had one that powerful, I mean, you could have picked a flea off of Kennedy's head.
I mean,
you know what I mean?
If you had a 40, like okay, we talk about the Johnson 30-06, right, being used in the attack in Dealey Plaza, and it had that 40 power scope. I see that one on a rooftop somewhere with a sniper.
Right.
You know, in a window somewhere with a sniper. I don't see it as the grassy knoll weapon. And that's the thing about this, you know. Maybe it was mounted for a scope and the scope was taken off for the attack in Dallas. But I've stood behind that fence too, man. And if you had a 10 power scope like what's on the depository weapon, then at that close of a distance, I don't think you can make Kennedy's head out. It's just too big in the scope.
Well, I think you could. With
a 10 power.
You would have wanted to, because look, you got Kennedy's wife sitting right next to him, who you don't want to kill. I mean, you know, that was just kind of like an unspoken rule back in the day. You know, the mafia and all these guys. You don't kill women and children.
With a scope at that close range, it's like you say, man, you could probably count his eyebrow hair.
Yeah, but again, that's something you don't want to miss, dude. You want to make sure you hit your shot. You want to be 100% sure you're going to hit your shot. So if you got that cat in the scope from the time he turns the corner at Elm Street, and you follow him on down, and you wait till the signal hits, and you pull that trigger, and you see in the Zapruder film what happened to Kennedy's head. I mean, he sliced that sumbitch right down the side. The flap falls down. His head's crushed in.
Destroyed,
and
man.
It is gruesome.
Destroyed.
Gruesome results.
Man,
so
that attack was that. Gruesome.
And it hit its mark.
Brutal. Just brutal, man. I mean,
you're lined up. That shot's taken at the precise time where you don't have Miss Kennedy, or in the background where she could possibly get hit. It's angled just right, so to where it's going to take his head off, and that's it.
I don't know, dude. I would have to think about that some more. Because you'd have to. He'd be big in your scope because that's awful close, But then again, when you stand back there behind the grassy knoll, behind the fence, and you look at where how close the sidewalk is in real life, in reality,
you're still about 50 feet away. I mean,
but. Would one fire a high-powered rifle from there and expect to get away? When you consider
one shot,
how, it's like, wow, man, you'd have to be a ballsy bastard to stand right here and fire a high-powered rifle with all these people right around you. Part of me goes, I don't know. The South Knoll and Sherry Feaster's work, the day I stood behind that fence, started to make a little more sense to me, dude. I'm serious.
Yeah, I couldn't see it. I was up there as well and went over to that side. Unless you're coming through the windshield, it doesn't fit.
On the South Knoll?
Yeah.
Yeah, but man, I stand up there behind that fence on the grassy knoll, and I'm like, this is just. There's no buffer between the tactical team and the public right there.
But there's nobody around. Dealey Plaza is an echo chamber. And I would like to see this rifle that Loran Hall gave his son, to see if there's any kind of indication that maybe a possible silencer was used on the end of this rifle. I mean, even if there wasn't, you still have the echo chamber that is Dealey Plaza. People wouldn't have known. I mean, most people thought the shot came from the grassy knoll for a reason, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
But again, most people have their backs to a grassy knoll shooter. They're not looking behind them. They're not looking, behind the fence. They're looking at the president that's driving by at the time. And if you have a professional shooter who takes that shot, hits his mark, immediately turns around, tosses the rifle, it's broken down, and they are the fuck out of there, it's quite feasible to me it could be pulled off.
I'm certainly 100% open to that. I'm not, convinced. The shot obviously came from the front. You're not going to
take the shot and sit around and make sure and admire your handiwork. You're going to immediately.
I guess maybe I don't. I don't think like you or those tactical guys. I probably maybe I just don't have the balls to. Can't imagine having the balls to do it. But the shot came from the front. Absolutely, I am 100% behind that. That shot did not come from behind.
At that point, it's a mission. It's a job. It's an objective. Yeah. And your most important objective, Doug, is to get away alive.
Yeah. And there's somebody there to make sure that you flip the switch, as Loran Hall said. Absolutely. So, guys, I'm hoping, we're hoping there will be more developments in the future regarding this rifle. This is a historic relic. I mean, at least to the time. If not, who knows? Right, Rob?
Yeah, if not the actual murder weapon, it's still pretty damn interesting, dude.
Fascinating is what it is.
The hows and the whys, but it does make you think and speculate for sure.
And, of course, Loran Hall also ended up like a prototype Walter White from Breaking Bad in his later years, too.
Right.
Him and three of his kids, grown kids, were arrested and charged in 1989 with running a massive methamphetamine manufacture and distribution ring. They arrested the kids, and instead of turning himself in, Loran Hall went on the lam to Costa Rica, and his kids, well, they were upset about that. And they not these guys, not the Pappas brothers, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Pappas brothers were Loran Hall's stepsons. These gentlemen seem to have conducted their lives in a completely different manner than did Loran Hall's real kids who were busted with him in the meth ring. Two totally different sets. These carried Hall's last name. Right, Rob? And they flipped, or they hired their own lawyers, and when he went on the lam, because they got mad, and said that Loran Hall, this was a CIA operation, and he was running it for the CIA, their father. The meth was to raise money, to buy guns, to send to the anti-communist rebels in Nicaragua. After a year, he was finally extradited from Costa Rica to the United States. When he walked in the courtroom, the judge gavelled and said, "Time served. I'm releasing Mr. Hall. Here's my decision to release Mr. Hall." And it is sealed and in a vault in perpetuity. And that's it. And he walked out of jail. Yeah. And he went home. I've made the comment before, that dude was, at that time at least, protected from on high by the Prince of Darkness himself. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Walked away scot-free. Walked away scot-free. So more developments. And if you haven't already guessed, I absolutely believe that Loran Hall was involved in the conspiracy to murder Kennedy on an operational level somehow. And I've been convinced of that for years, Rob. And you know what, dude? Ironically enough, if you think back, you and I actually met on a debate thread on Loran Hall.
Yeah, agreeing.
Agreeing, yeah. We met agreeing, and we ended up arguing with somebody who didn't.
Right.
I actually remember that because their comment was something like, well, this is ridiculous. I've never heard James Files mention Loran Hall.
Right. And the rest is history, folks.
And me and Rob, we were in there like a tag team pair of midget wrestlers. We were all over this dude, man. Just like.
What the fuck are you stupid?
Hey, man, I got a little bit of the old James Files treatment. James Files believer treatment a couple weeks ago, as a matter of fact. But, yeah. Oh,
is that still a thing?
To some. And you know what I commented to the dude? I thought about what you told me.
This guy is smoking and joking on the grassy knoll at November in Dallas conferences, and people are really thinking this guy is still a shooter.
Dude, I thought about what you told me about November in Dallas 2019, and that was my comment to this gentleman who 100% believes everything James Files says. I said, dude, James, the man who pulled the trigger on the headshot that killed John Kennedy would not be on the grassy knoll in November of 2019 approaching random strangers and offering to take a selfie with them for $10. If you think the man that pulled that trigger, I don't know what the fuck you've got going on with your reality, but if you think that guy would be doing that, which is exactly what James Files was doing,
yes,
then you're a conspiracy buff. You're not a researcher. You're just a conspiracy buff. That's it.
Right.
James Files, or the man that killed Kennedy, would not do that. No, James Files does. All right, Rob. So yeah, guys, expect more to come regarding this rifle. Hopefully, we'll get some more insight. Right, Rob?
That's right.
That's right. All right, Rob, what you got next, buddy?
You ready to do some emails? I got quite a few.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? I actually have one thing I wanted to bring to everybody's attention, if I could, before we do the emails.
Sure.
Okay. I want to talk about a recent book review that was published online in our field of study, the recent Kennedys and King review of John Newman's book, Into the Storm. I want to talk about that for just a minute, if I could. Just a little bit. Author and literary critic Jim DiEugenio's review of Dr. Newman's most recently published work on the Kennedy case, Into the Storm, was published.
I'll be over here taking a nap, man. Just wake me up when you're done.
Oh, man, come on. No, this is, here's the thing. Rob, there's just one little thing in this review that I think needs to be clarified a little bit. This is, by and large, Rob, a well-done, well-informed, and well-reasoned review by Mr. DiEugenio. It's fair and well...
Sponsored by Coca-Cola and Lay's.
Hold up. We got sponsored by Coca-Cola?
No, I thought Jim DiEugenio was sponsored by Coca-Cola and Lay's potato chips.
You got me excited just a little bit. I was going to have you tell them we need lots of Coke Zero. Man, I thought we got a sponsorship, dude.
Yeah,
dang.
I'll take some.
And sour cream and onion, Lay's. That's what we like.
Skippy.
But really, dude, it's a fair and well-reasoned as a review, as the reviewer deals with various aspects of Newman's work, things Newman deals with in the book, like the Freedom Rides, Kennedy's foreign policy, Operation Mongoose, the Operation Northwoods event, Soviet defector Yuri Nosenko, and what the reviewer calls, quote, the false accusations of agency officer Samuel Halpern implicating the Kennedys in the CIA Mafia Castro assassination plots. All of this is, again, well done, and I tend to agree with the reviewer in his assessments of this part of the book. But then we get to the reviewer's take on Newman's research that is actively debunking all to hell the claims of Cuban exile Antonio Veciana. All right? Antonio Veciana, of course, is the anti-Castro exile who, after after serving penitentiary time for narcotics trafficking, we were talking about that earlier, surfaced and claimed to have been a CIA asset and claimed to have witnessed his CIA handler, a man he knew as Maurice Bishop, in the company of accused Kennedy assassin Lee Harvey Oswald. Now, Veciana never, ever claimed out loud that the CIA's David Atlee Phillips was this alleged Maurice Bishop until 2014. Rather, he denied it several times over several decades, while simultaneously changing and adding to the myth of Maurice Bishop, changing his story's timeline over and over the decades as more info regarding Phillips's true activities came to light. And this is what Dr. Newman is illuminating in his work. Now, Rob, I believe that Veciana both led us all to believe and let us all believe that this made-up specter, this bishop, was actually David Atlee Phillips. What do you think?
I agree wholeheartedly with that statement.
And you know what? This is exactly the tone and direction of Dr. Newman's work on Veciana, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to 2019 when he first produced all this information in a informative oralization of his research, at the November in Dallas Kappa conference there in 2019.
Yep, and before that,
where he laid it out all pretty nice and simple, and it's hard to argue with the facts.
It's hard to argue with the facts that Dr. Newman has presented everybody through his research. That, again, that Veciana over and over denied it, while at the same time morphing his story as needed, right? And until 2014 led us to believe. Now, Mr. DiEugenio describes it as Dr. Newman's quote-unquote preoccupation and disagreement with Veciana. But it's much more than either of those. And that Veciana indeed made Bishop up out of whole cloth is, again, the tone, direction, and analysis of Dr. Newman's work on Veciana. It's not a preoccupation or a disagreement. So even though I thought the reviewer did a really good job and was fair elsewhere in his review, there's one paragraph here in the review that I feel needs to be addressed, as I feel any potential reader of this book who might read this review prior to purchasing Dr. Newman's book will, again, I fear, be misled as to the tone, direction, and analysis of Dr. Newman's research regarding Mr. Veciana and his quote-unquote Phillips was Bishop story. Okay? I want to read one paragraph here from the review. Rob, if I may, sir.
Great tale.
Here we go. This paragraph dealing with Veciana. Newman admits that there was a female contact who worked for Veciana who communicated messages to him from Phillips. Parenthetically, Newman, page 83. Dolores Chow had been Veciana's secretary, and she recalled messages from a man who used the name Bishop. According to Hancock, in 1963, there was another woman who was used for messaging later. Veciana recalled her name as Pruitt. This has to be Virginia Pruitt, who Phillips worked with in propaganda operations. John also admits that some CIA agents stayed on the island after the revolution, and Veciana's name was one of them, who appeared to be an associate of Phillips. Now, excuse me, and Veciana named one of them, who appeared to be an associate of Phillips. But he rules out the possibility that Phillips would have ever returned because he had no diplomatic immunity since he was not under State Department cover. But it's this sentence right here. Newman admits that there was a female contact who worked for Veciana who communicated messages to him from Phillips. Admits communicated messages to him from Phillips. Rob, there are 7 books on my bookshelf at work that are of a personal nature in my office. Only 7. I have the complete Sherlock Holmes, the Doubleday collection. I have both Woodward and Bernstein Watergate books. I got this book called November 22nd, 1963 that my son gave me. Secret Wars with Airstrikes and Tanks by Larry Hancock. Pieces of the Puzzle by Miss Gail Nix Jackson, and Into the Storm. All right, so I read this quote. Newman admits that there was a female contact who worked for Veciana who communicated messages to him from Phillips. Newman, page 83. So I pulled my book down and I turned to page 83. Now, next I'm going to read part of the book. I'm going to read page 83 to you and the listeners, Rob. In fact, just so we can get the full context of what's on page 83, I'm going to read the last paragraph of page 82 and the first paragraph of page 84, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, but first, okay, you've read John Newman, correct? Of course you have.
Yes.
How easily digestible a read is a John Newman book, do you think?
It's not very easy. You have to really know the subject matter.
It can get complicated, can't it?
And look shit up along the way. Yeah.
Right. Now, here's the thing. Near the beginning of the book's section on Veciana, on page 67, Dr. Newman, I'm doing this, guys, because, again, you have to have more info and context to understand page 83 of the book. Near the beginning of the book section on Veciana, on page 67, Dr. Newman takes the time to explain to us a device that he has employed to sort out the movements of the true David Atlee Phillips and the alleged movements of Veciana's Maurice Bishop. Again, when you're describing this and jumping from document to document to alias to time, that can get complicated because you're talking about an imaginary Phillips, a bishop, the real Phillips, David Atlee Phillips. All right, so Dr. Newman writes this on page 67. The release of CIA documents left Veciana with a difficult choice. He realized that he had to give up the entire story of his recruitment by Phillips in Cuba or adjust the date to the time when Phillips really was in Cuba. Veciana decided to preserve the Phillips story and therefore was forced to change the date of the recruitment. Why he waited until 2014 to do that raises problems that I will address in future volumes. Veciana's unfortunate decision ended up causing more problems than it solved. And so in this chapter, I will begin my examination of Veciana by taking the reader back to the point in time where he now claims he was recruited in Cuba by a man he knew as Maurice Bishop. In Veciana's final 2 accounts of the 2014 AARC conference and in his 2017 book, Train to Kill, he forcefully and unequivocally contended that Maurice Bishop was Dave Phillips. For this reason, in this chapter, I will be using the name Phillips instead of Bishop. This is important, guys. When I mean the true Phillips, I will use the appellation Phillips. When I mean Bishop, I will, for the most part, use the appellation notional Phillips. Only in instances where clarity demands will I use the pseudonym Bishop. All right, so the notional Phillips, Rob, the notion by Veciana that Phillips was Bishop, right? That's what he's doing, to differentiate between the actual Phillips and the notional Phillips, because that's imperative to actually understanding the material here, thus the device that was employed. All right, to demonstrate this device's use, right, I want to read a bit of page 69, okay? And this is a section called Swiss Cheese. For 38 years, Veciana's accounts to the SSCIA, that's the Church Committee, the House Select Committee, Gayton Fonzie, Tony Summers, and Dick Russell about his recruitment by the notional Phillips had more holes than Swiss cheese. For example, Phillips was a contact NOC, a non-official cover CIA asset in Havana without diplomatic protection. His duties concerned agency propaganda activities, and if he observed anything significant in the course of that work, to report it to the Havana station, nothing more. His work precluded recruiting anti-Castro Cubans. Phillips' participation in recruiting Cuban dissidents would have endangered his life and the lives of his wife and children, not to mention CIA operations against Castro in Cuba. Even if all that were not true, Veciana's 38-year claim of being recruited in Cuba by the notional Phillips in mid-1960 was impossible for an even more compelling reason. The real David Phillips was nowhere near Cuba. Even the most cursory examination of the declassified CIA records on Phillips reveals that he was not in Cuba in mid-1960. He was at CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, up to his eyeballs, setting up the propaganda and psychological warfare for Eisenhower's covert program to overthrow Cuba. Now, there he's explaining a lot of his quote-unquote disagreement, I guess, Rob, with Veciana, but he's also, that is a demonstration of the use of the appellation notional Phillips versus real Phillips, right? Are you there, Rob? Did I lose you, sir?
No, I'm here.
You always
Sorry, I had to take a potty break while you were reading.
Oh, man. Right in the...
I didn't think I'd be missed, and God damn it.
Sorry, man. You never know when I'm going to go, right, Rob? And you're supposed to go, yeah. And then that's basically so I can breathe is the way that works. Yeah.
Sorry, buddy.
Okay. So, now, here we go. We're going to get to the page in question. Now, the page 83, where the quote from the review is that Dr. Newman admits that there was a lady who carried messages between Veciana and David Phillips, okay? But, see, to do that, I want you guys to listen very carefully. To do that, again, I'm going to read the last paragraph. To get the context right, we got to read the last paragraph of page 82 and then the first paragraph of page 84. So that's what I'm going to do now. But I want you and the listeners, Rob, to listen very, very, very carefully for Dr. Newman to admit that messages were passed between David Atlee Phillips and Antonio Veciana. Okay? Here we go. In this section, I will drop the usage of the adjective notional for the name Phillips for two reasons. One reason is the special role Dolores Chow played in as the intermediary between Veciana and the man he called Bishop, and the circumstances under which Chow remembered that the man's name was Bishop. The other reason is her recollection that when she had worked as Veciana's secretary in Cuba, he had started taking language courses in the evening, and the implications of that memory for who the quote-unquote bishop in Cuba might have been. The investigative work of Tony Summers has given us important new evidence about her recollections. For reasons of clarity, this evidence is best understood by using the name, quote-unquote, Bishop instead of the notional Phillips. In one of his 1978 interviews with Vessiana, Tony Summers succeeded in doing what the Church Committee and the House Select Committee had been unable to do. Summers got Vessiana to cough up the name and location of the woman, quote-unquote, Bishop used to contact Vessiana. On 15 November 1978, Summers explained to Gaten Fonzie how he pulled it off. Summers said he managed to squeeze the name of the woman out of Vessiana by goading him, telling him that everything was just a lot of balderdash and that he hadn't given out one iota of information that could be confirmed. Summers said he told Vessiana he didn't believe the woman ever existed. Provoked, Vessiana said her name was Mrs. Dolores Chow and gave her address in Puerto Rico. Summers located her and interviewed her in Puerto Rico during 1978. In his 2013 edition of Not in Your Lifetime, Summers said Mrs. Chow had, quote, acted as a cutout between Vessiana and Bishop. In the interview, Summers learned that before Bishop and Vessiana both left Cuba, Dolores had been Vessiana's secretary at Julio Lobo's Banco Financiero in Havana. Chow told Summers that when Vessiana became a leading anti-Castro activist, she had agreed to act as sort of a human answering machine and take messages for him. Summers decided to employ the following strategy to test her familiarity with the name Bishop. During the interview, Summers ran through a large number of names of people who might have called, all of them entirely imaginary except the name Bishop. She promptly responded that, of all the names mentioned, the one she remembered was Bishop. That was a prudent strategy, providing, emphasis is the author's, providing that Vessiana had not mentioned the name Bishop to her before Summers interviewed her. The importance of this point cannot be overemphasized because Summers interviewed her in 1978, many years after she had last spoken with Vessiana. And we know for a fact that Vessiana did speak with Chow right before Summers interviewed her. Top of page 84. Gaten Fonzie kept in touch with Summers after the publication of his book Conspiracy. When Summers eventually went to Puerto Rico, he found that the address Vessiana had furnished for Dolores was no longer where she lived. He was able to track her down and interview her, and afterward returned to Miami to tell Fonzie about what she had said. Fonzie's 2013 edition of The Last Investigation reveals a noteworthy remark that Mrs. Chow made to Summers. Quote, until Vessiana had called her to ask if she would talk with me, she hadn't been in touch with him for years. Therefore, Vessiana could have steered Dolores into using the name Bishop before Summers arrived to interview her. Did anyone hear John Newman admit in any of that text, in any of that body of that book, that anybody had acted as an intermediary of any sort between David Atlee Phillips and Antonio Vessiana? Rob?
Nope. Not in the least.
And not in the least. Nowhere near it. Dr. Newman simply reported and described Anthony Summers' interaction with Dolores Chow, Gaten Fonzie, and Antonio Vessiana. Nowhere did he, as the reviewer states, quote, admit that a female contact communicated messages to Vessiana from David Atlee Phillips. What Newman does is, you ready for this? Report what a woman who worked for Vessiana once said. Now, I ran this by you. I ran this by Ted. I ran this by 3 other people, and I contacted Alan Dale of the Assassination Archives Research Center, who is Dr. Newman's research assistant on all of this work, to ask him, am I missing something here? And he says, no, I didn't miss a thing. And the reason I feel it's important to bring up, guys, dear listener, is I feel that anybody reading this review is misled as to the tone, direction, and analysis. Because the tone, direction, and analysis of Newman's work here is the complete opposite of, quote-unquote, admitting any such thing. It's false, and it's misleading about the book. Guys, don't judge a book by its cover, but don't judge it by its review either. All right? Buy this book and read it. And that's all I had there, Mr. Rob. Thoughts?
Well, I'm not surprised. It kind of interferes with the whole CIA primacy theory, as DiEugenio promptly propagates.
The David Atlee Phillips as bishop pillar, that is a load-bearing wall in the theory of CIA primacy in the case. It definitely is.
Yeah. That's the one thing, about this whole JFK quote community. I think all jokes aside, we laugh because we love. But all jokes aside, I think Jim DiEugenio is a great researcher, a great writer, but he's not completely honest about things that don't fit into his theory. And he's got a great website. He's got a great platform. He's got great connections. But it's just disheartening to know that his view is so slanted that he cannot allow an opposing view to be heard correctly. It's mind-blowing. It's mind-boggling. I've always prided myself on being open-minded when it comes to the facts and revelations that occur in the JFK assassination universe. And to constantly be forced to rethink and remorph, your understanding of what happened that day, and to not be afraid to admit when you're wrong, and to not be afraid to be open-minded enough to accept new research when it contradicts your old way of thinking. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Well, I think it's, again, like I read the part, I know this book pretty well, and I remember the part about notional Phillips. And, well, this is Phillips. This is the notional Phillips, because when you get to Phillips, maybe Phillips and Bishop, and you're using them all in the same, it can get confusing. But, I went back so you guys can understand what he meant. And if Mr. DiEugenio, depending on how quick he read the book, if that part, that caveat that Dr. Newman threw in there, like, okay, from here on, I'm going to describe him as this. And then when he got to page 82, he said, look, so this next part makes sense. I'm going to describe him as this. So make sure you keep up. Here we go. Maybe there was some context miss there, benefit of the doubt. But again, even if there was context miss, that sentence that John Newman admits on page 83, that there were messages passed between Antonio Veciana and David Atlee Phillips, it is anathema to everything that's in the research of that book. And that's why I'm like, don't be misled. Because if you read the review, he's like, well, what the hell's the big deal? He's admitting that what's going on? It may cause somebody to be dismissive of the book, maybe. And I think that research right there is too important to be dismissed.
Yeah, or be dismissive of the whole Veciana made up the Bishop thing, which, of course, contradicts DiEugenio's own theories about things. I mean, he's heavily relied on the revelations of Antonio Veciana and his theory.
That's what I mean, man.
And,
that's a load-bearing wall, and that Alan Dulles was the mastermind structure.
Yeah, and, DiEugenio is a smart guy. There's no way he misunderstood what Newman was saying. To me, that's just a blatantly dishonest, pathetic attempt to discredit John Newman's research, if I've ever heard one. And
at the very least, be dismissive of that research. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's
just, guys, buy the book for yourself. Read the book. You need to know this stuff. All right, Rob, you ready for some emails, Holmes?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's
hit
do
the music.
Emails. Go ahead, sir.
All right, let me shove my hand down in my bag here and rattle things around. Ooh, feels a little full today, Doug.
Uh-oh. This ought to be fun.
I am pleasantly surprised at the amount of emails we've gotten here. This is going to be a fun one. Our first one today is from Chris O'Brien. And it says, "Hi, guys. Just listened to the interview testimony of Robert Vinson on the Lone Gunman podcast From the Vault and found his story fascinating." Now, for those of you who don't know, Robert Vinson wrote a book called Flight from Dallas in the early 90s, in which he describes a flight from Dallas, of course, in which he alleges that there was a gentleman on board the flight that resembled Lee Harvey Oswald and was subsequently dropped off in New Mexico or Colorado. I can't remember which. But it's an interesting book nonetheless. To continue with the email here, Chris says, "Roy Hargraves spoke about getting a flight out of Dallas with Felipe Vidal Santiago on the day of the assassination. He said one other passenger was on the plane, so 3 people in total, excluding the pilot. My question is this: based on the description of the 2 men on the flight by Vinson, might it have been the same flight? Vinson spoke about a Cuban and a guy resembling Oswald. Might the Oswald in question have been Roy Hargraves? All the best, Chris O'Brien."
That's a great question. Yeah. What do you think, Rob?
Well, I mean, I don't see the resemblance between Roy Hargraves and Lee Harvey Oswald, to be honest with you. But somebody
short with sandy hair and a receding headline. That would be the extent of the resemblance.
Right. But again, you're looking at the recollection of, at the time, 30 years prior, on a plane ride, where you're not familiar with Lee Harvey Oswald or who the hell he is, or Roy Hargraves for that matter. So one could certainly, look back on a 30-year-old memory and possibly think that guy might have resembled Lee Harvey Oswald in some way, form, or fashion. But it is interesting to posit that theory.
It's definitely
we don't know
possible,
exactly how.
Chris.
Yeah, because I mean, for those of you who aren't strangers to the show, you know that me and Doug firmly believe that the dark-complected man was probably Felipe Vidal Santiago, and the umbrella man could have been Roy Hargraves.
Or, what's his name? Drawing a blank now. Jerry Buchanan. Man, I've seen one photo comparison of Umbrella Man and Jerry Buchanan was one of the Interpen guys, a guy that ran with Vidal and Hargraves.
Yeah.
And, man, I've seen one photo comparison where you go, oh, shit, that could be Buchanan. He could have been there. One of the
Hargraves
two.
himself in the interview with Noel Twyman and someone who would have talked about by Larry Hancock, he pretty much states that he was there in Dallas that day as a kind of a backup explosives guy after the underpass. Correct?
Yep, there was a truck bomb, or at least a vehicle bomb, alongside the road on the other side of the triple overpass. And if Kennedy made it through the shooting gallery alive, they were going to detonate the bomb when the limo got next to it. That was allegedly the plan. And yeah.
So I mean, these guys had to get out of Dallas in some way. So, hopping a top secret, either military or CIA flight out of Dallas, and getting dropped off in the middle of nowhere in New Mexico or Colorado or wherever it was they ended up. Certainly wouldn't be out of the question.
I've been told that there were 2 private airplanes, and it's also been speculated, or I've been told that the scuttlebutt was that Loran Hall took 2 people in his Oldsmobile, 58 Oldsmobile, that he was parked on Ackerd in downtown Dallas waiting. And 2 people involved made it to his car with him, and there was 1 car and a couple of plane loads of guys. But that could be speculation too.
When you look at the operational support that would have been on the ground, if we're positing that somebody could have been shooting from the 6th floor, or somebody could have been shooting from the Dowtex or a rooftop or the grassy knoll, as well as spotters on Elm Street, like the dark complected man. You're looking at 4, 5, 6, 7 guys. They're all not going to pile in a van together and get the hell out of there. They're each going to have their own circuitous route of escape, and it's not going to be together. It might be a couple guys together, but it's not going to be all of them together. Some might leave by a car, some might leave by plane, some might hide out for a while and leave later. Who knows? But yeah, it's certainly an interesting thing to think about as far as how these guys made it out of Dallas.
Yeah, I like the way you think, sir, Mr. Chris. Where your head's at there, buddy.
Chris. Yeah, buddy. So from Chris, we go to Geraldine Johnstone. Great podcast, guys. I just want to say that Rob's sexy Southern voice really does it for me. He could slip his big Doug horn inside my ARRB anytime. Love, Jerry. XOXOXO. Well, thank you, Geraldine. And no, Doug, I did not write this email myself.
That was creepy as hell.
Who wrote that? Who?
Geraldine Johnstone.
Geraldine Johnstone.
That did not come off nearly as cool as it sounded in your head.
Okay, next, please, sir.
All right, our next email comes from Svetlana Bendova. Hertz goes into.
Holy Jesus. All right.
Hello, boys. I like podcasts very much. I listen to each one. I was friend with Marina in 59 in Sparrow School in Minsk. I remember she was a nice girl. I want to say it not true. She not use douche. She use. Mistake is because she like tuna fish scent. I have question about magic bullet. They say bullet exit Kennedy throat make small hole. This means it's spiral. But bullet enter Connolly back make large hole. This mean it tumble. If same bullet, what caused tumble? Spasibo, Svetlana.
What caused the tumble was the bullet's lousy Slavic accent. Actually, is what caused the bullet to tumble.
God damn it!
What?
I was trying, man.
What the hell is old Svetlana smoking when she's sending emails, I wonder?
I don't know.
I don't know, man.
But
I don't know.
To address your somewhat serious question.
Was it?
Yeah. I mean, it's been posited, Okay, you have a bullet going into the back of Kennedy's neck area, right? Upper shoulder, and exiting with a small hole in his throat. but somehow it tumbled and went in sideways into Connally. Now, this could happen a couple ways. What's been posited is that it hit a piece of bone in Kennedy, which caused it to tumble. Not deform, just tumble. Now, from the test firing into, the sheep cadavers and other things, we know that that's complete horseshit. That whenever you fire a Mannlicher-Carcano bullet into and it hits bone, it deforms and mushrooms and gets all kinds of crazy looking. It does not come out looking like a pristine magic bullet
No.
that ended up on a stretcher at Parkland after making 7 wounds in 2 different people and never hitting a bone.
That is
just
some
fantasy.
fairy tale bullshit.
Yes. It also could have, as we know, there's a nick in the tie of President Kennedy. And not that a tie knot is a hard object by any means. It could have thrown off the trajectory of the bullet, a little bit if it hit just right, and could have caused the tumble. Or it was a totally different bullet altogether, and the wound in Kennedy's or in Connally's back was not from the same bullet. That's the long and the short answer.
Yeah.
But thank you, Svetlana, and stay away from that tuna fish douche. Okay,
Way far away from it.
please.
Strawberry mango. Come on.
All right, next email comes from longtime listener, Doug, Hugh Anusworth.
Hey, Hugh Anusworth. He's back.
Hey guys, as somebody fairly new to your excellent podcast, I've been taking the time to go back and listen to some of the old episodes.
I thought old Hugh
have seen-
Anusworth had been with us for a while.
Well, he has. I don't know.
He says he's new
Maybe
to
he's
it.
talking about our individual episodes.
Oh, maybe. Or maybe he's forgetful.
Maybe.
Like
He is
once a month, he's like, holy shit, this is a great podcast.
I have to say that everyone can get a lot of good information and analysis about the JFK assassination from those in a really concrete, down-to-earth way. Highly recommended. I also like the way you take the conversation further and discuss other important issues. Like that time Rob opened up to Doug about his ED problem that so many of us are of a certain age have. No shame, Rob. We can't always perform 100. Hugh. And he said, oops, I forgot the audio. And this is my problem, Doug, apparently. Have a listen to this. If you will, sir.
Oh, my Lord. There's nothing there. What did that
It's
say?
really soft, Doug.
Huh? Say that again.
Did you hear?
No.
You couldn't hear that?
No.
Hold on.
No, it's not. I can hear something, but I can't make it out. What's he saying?
Oh.
It's really soft?
Yes.
Well, Hugh, if it's really soft, sir.
Fucking hold on. So if you could benefit from extra confidence when it's time to perform, visit BlueChew.com for more.
There, just for you, Hugh. Visit BlueChew.com.
Thanks, Hugh. Bastard. All right. Next up, from the Liberty Lobbyist. Greetings, fellow truth fighters. Down here at the lobby, we've been organizing a new task group aimed at getting to the truth of the JFK assassination. We have been struggling a little with the title of the group, however, After much back and forth, we finally come up with a name that we think will be catchy, self-explanatory, and attract new members. We'd be grateful for your opinion on this name. Thanks, Liberty Lobbyist. Here is their name, Doug.
Here is their name.
Ready for this? We have more audio. Here we go.
Oh, Lord. Totally unintelligible on our end, Rob. No, it is not translating through the old digital
damn it,
internet realm there.
It's me saying the Liberty Lobby Committee. Liberty Lobby Committee.
Hey, somewhere I've got a soundbite of you telling some dude his mustache is sexy. I had to find it, though.
God. Thanks, Liberty Lobbyist. Bastard.
Y'all quit picking on Rob.
Okay.
Damn, why are they picking on you, Rob?
That's 2 in a row picking on me.
2 in a row.
I can't help it. I've got a giant tongue rolling around in this mouth. Okay. Next up from Charles Williamson. Hey, guys. Based on your recommendation, I recently purchased Tipping Point by Larry Hancock. I'm less than halfway through it, but I'm giving it 5 stars out of 5 and 2 thumbs up. Hope to hear more from Larry on your show. I'm 98% sold on the theory that the shooters in Dallas were Cuban exiles supported by some rogue CIA guys. I agree that the operation had to be a very small group, probably 15 people or less. I don't know if that's a small group, but okay. In my opinion, David Morales and Rip Robertson were on the ground in Dallas, along with 8 to 10 Cubans that made up 3 or 4 sniper teams. I don't believe anyone outside that group knew exactly who the shooters were. If that's the case, where does Lawrence Howard fit in? I find it hard to believe that he would be part of a Cuban CIA group. I don't think they would trust him enough to be part of their crew. Could Howard have been part of an entirely different crew, financed by right-wingers who were totally separate from the Cuban CIA guys, and neither group had knowledge of the other? I know L.J. Delsa was convinced Howard was a shooter in Dallas. Is there a transcript of Delsa's interview with Howard anywhere? What did Howard do from 64 on? He lived until 1998, I believe. Stay safe and keep up the good work. Charlie in Maryland.
Great email, Charlie. Thank you, sir. Howard was out in L.A. working the Operation Chaos stuff out in California with the CIA in 68, 69. I know that. He had infiltrated the Brown Berets. Was what he did. And I don't know how long he stayed active. I know he ended up in Guatemala and Honduras and spent some time, I believe, in Nicaragua in the 60s. Back then.
Yeah, and to think this guy couldn't have fit in with the Cubans. I mean, he looked Cuban, and he was a badass motherfucker. Not to be fucked with.
Yes. He was a serious
So I think he would have fit
individual.
in just fine with anybody who was on an assassination team.
I'll tell you this, it's kind of an understood thing that the Cuban exile paramilitary guys trusted Lawrence Howard a hell of a lot more than they trusted Frank Sturgis. And Frank Sturgis was practically...
Or Jerry Hemming.
Or Jerry Hemming, yeah. I would say that Howard would be on that scale of how serious an operator an individual is. It's going to be a few clicks higher than even Hemming, you know?
Well, yeah.
For sure. I guess that's possible. Oh, no, there are no transcripts of that interview that I've ever heard. I don't think they recorded that interview in Howard's house. I believe that was just a sit and talk kind of thing. Could be wrong.
Well, if anybody has ever found L.J. Delsa's notes in the HSCA in the archives from an interview with Lawrence Howard, fucking forward them to us like right now.
We want them now.
Yeah.
But as far as I do not, people have tried to, if there's evidence for circumstantial evidence, say, placing this guy in Dallas or in Dealey Plaza, say, this guy over here, and then you've got circumstantial evidence pointing to this guy over here. I think that we do ourselves a disservice from an intellectually honest standpoint if there were two different teams there to hit him. It's just a coincidence they were there at the same time and they didn't know about each other. Charlie, I don't buy that argument so much. I think that's
the odds of that happening are too astronomical.
Yeah, and that may be a way we attempt to explain two different sets of circumstantial evidence. That way, we don't have to face cognitive dissonance on either front, but we get a little bit of confirmation bias on both.
I think Howard would have fit right in with the right winger agenda, and he would have fit in with the rogue CIA agenda as well, and the anti-Castro Cuban agenda as well. So it's not out of the realm possibility that if any of these groups were behind the assassination, that he could have been a part of either one of them.
Thoroughly agree.
All right. Next up, Jones Mellons sent us an email. Hi, guys. I'm sorry. I was just thinking about Jones Mellons for a second.
And I was trying not to, but go ahead.
Let me put some bleach in my eyes. Hi, guys. In my humble opinion, that excellent analysis you gave last show on the supposed CIA primacy in the JFK assassination was 100% correct. Seems to me the idea that there was no top-level CIA conspiracy to kill the president, but there was a top-level cover-up afterwards is spot on. These two things seem to have been confused and conflated by some so-called, quote, researchers. Eugenia. Thinking Alan Cockblocker Dulles had anything to do with organizing the assassination is as likely as finding Mac Wallace's fingerprints all over Doris Day's coochie. Best. Jones Mellons.
Thanks, Jones.
Oh, I'm dying over here.
Oh, wow.
You just had to throw in Mac Wallace's fingerprints on Doris Day's coochie. Okay.
We got a hell of a crew, don't we, Rob?
I love them. I love all of you. Just keep them coming, people. God damn, I love it. All right. Next up, this is from Jim Wilson. And just by the names, you know whether or not it's going to be a fucking joke or a serious question.
Oh, I better pay attention to this question. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Hello, Doug and Rob. I'm a longtime listener and appreciator of all your guys' hard work. Here are a few questions on my mind that I would love to hear your thoughts on. Number one, are you two aware of Buell Wesley Frazier's new book and his new assertion that the day after the assassination, he observed a car parked out front of his family home and seen a man open his trunk and put a rifle in it? If either of you have the book, I was wondering what the man and car looked like, as he didn't provide those details in the interview I heard with him on Donald Jeffries' show.
I am unaware of that.
I am unaware of that as well. Now, I do have Buell Frazier's book. I have not cracked that sumbitch yet. I've been meaning to. I should have took it with me on vacation and didn't, but I plan on reading it between now and the next show. So I will hopefully be able to have some more insight to your question on the next quick hits, Jim, for sure. I promise. Number two, according to Mary Farrell, the woman, not the website, there was a second man held on suspicion of involvement that was held well into December. The only details from the newspaper article she had mentioned was that he was a 10th Street resident. Any idea who this was? Now, Doug, remember Tippett was killed at the intersection of 10th and Jefferson,
right?
Correct? Okay. Do you have any insight as to who this man was that was held into December suspicion?
No,
that lived
none.
on 10th Street?
None.
I don't either.
There was
now, unless it was some of these weird folks that we've talked about here before on my show, like Igor Vaganov or one of those weird guys that had picked up, I don't know if it was Jack Ruby or one of Jack Ruby's associates. I'm not sure.
That didn't ring any bells with me.
Now, it could have been the alleged gun runners, Jack Ruby's associates, Darnell Whittier, and I can't remember the other guy's name off the top of my head.
Oh, those guys, Lawrence. Yeah. Elrod.
They were fleeing and they wrecked their car and they were in jail at the same time as Oswald was.
The guys that were in jail with Oswald and John Franklin Elrod. Yeah. There was a high-speed chase. They had a pole. They had a bunch of guns. And Elrod said that he had overheard another guy saying in jail that they had met Jack Ruby in a hotel. He had paid him a bunch of money to run these guns. Yeah. Maybe one of those guys. I don't know how long. You know, I just did the last episode of the Dallas Action was the second half of it. I talked about the John Elrod story and the LaFontaine's book. Can't remember if I covered I don't think they were released. They were convicted. So I don't know. Could have been those guys maybe, though. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they lived on 10th Street or not, but it's certainly worth looking into, and that's probably who we're thinking of here, now that I think about it.
Might be.
Number 3, Nancy Perrin Rich, the Ruby associate and hot little dangerous chick. What became of her? She provided some of the best testimony concerning Ruby and what he was up to. After her appearance on Rush to Judgment, I can find no real information on what happened to her. Keep up the good work and analysis from your pal, IP Freely, a.k.a. Jimmy James, a.k.a. Jim Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Jim. That last name rings not one single bell with me, sir. Sorry.
Well, I believe, and don't quote me on this, Jim, that Nancy Perrin Rich was the lady that had met, I think it was Jack Ruby on an airplane before the assassination, and he had allegedly told her or alluded to the assassination beforehand. Now, I'm not 100% sure about this information. I believe there was a lot of interest from Jim Garrison in Nancy Perrin Rich, and I believe she had moved to New Orleans by this time, or was from New Orleans, or something like that. And that Garrison was trying to talk to her, and she was trying to get her to be one of his star witnesses. But something didn't quite pan out correctly with it. I'm not really 100% sure. But if that's the same Nancy Rich we're talking about here, I believe that's what the story is, Doug. But it's just, I never pay much attention to it because it's just a story.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to say things after the fact. You know, I was on an airplane with Jack Ruby and he told me, la, 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 you know. It's symptomatic of these people that want to insert themselves into history for whatever reason, you know.
A phenomenon we are cursed with what we study.
Yes. So my advice would be grain of salt, bud.
Grain of salt.
But thank you, Jimmy James.
Thank you, Jimmy James.
All right. Here we go. Next one is from Tim Hugh. I'm a baseball fan, and with my other obsession, slowing for the off season, it's time to rejoin this one. 2 comments and a question, boys. The JFK assassination isn't the only place people refusing to do homework is problematic. People like to have their, quote, own anthill of facts and opinions and vigorously defend said anthill regardless of education level or topic.
Amen.
I really appreciate you speak truth. I really appreciate the audio content here, and the Lone Gunman video content on YouTube as well, even though you don't have a transcript. Tee-hee. Hey, go fuck yourself, Tim. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey, that's a sore spot with us, pal.
Yeah. Don't fucking talk about transcripts.
Don't crack wise, see?
He says, he goes on to say, the episode with Caroline was fantastic. You three get along, bring items to the table, have fantastic repartee, and your voices are all different enough so it's easy to tell immediately who's talking. Well, I should hope Caroline's voice is different than ours. I mean, if it's not something... I mean, I know she has a deep, gravelly voice, but it should be a little sexier than me and Doug's. Podcasts with at least one male and one female voice are very enjoyable from an auditory standpoint. Well, we're not trying to give your ears a boner, Tim.
No, no ear boners from us.
It is what it is, but I promise you, sir, Caroline will once again grace these airwaves sooner than later. Okay?
Yeah.
Promise.
If your ear gets stiff, dude, you have an infection. That's what's going on there.
We loved having Caroline on the show as well, and we do have a great chemistry, and I think that show was fantastic. And she will definitely be back. Don't you worry. I'm trying to work on my Oswald timeline. He says a handful of books have good timelines, but the economy is what it is, and buying all the books isn't realistic. Whereas are the best online Lee Harvey Oswald timelines that are more factually based than agenda-driven, with assessments of the Tippit shooting being a reasonable proxy for which is which. Thanks for talking me into bookmarking a few of the obvious sites. Maybe my autistic spectrum, but we'll find something useful for you guys sometime. Tim,
I want you to Google right now. Google Ira David Wood III. Ira David Wood III. JFK Assassination Chronology. You will find a downloaded PDF. It is such a great resource. He did such a fantastic job on that thing, and it's like a little PDF you can flip through. It's not like, or get the Walt Brown chronology on CD-ROM, which is how many? 70-something thousand pages. But for your purposes, I think right now, just do that. You can do it free, and you can construct a pretty good timeline on Mr. Wood's work there. That's what I would recommend.
And he's also the father of Evan Rachel Wood, hot Hollywood actress. So give him some props for that as well.
I did not know that.
Yeah. A victim of Marilyn Manson.
Didn't know that.
Oswald's specific timeline makes me think of Mae Brussels' work. I believe she has a very good Oswald timeline out there, as well as trying to think what the other one was, and it's escaping me at the moment. But you can find several of them online. Just Google Lee Harvey Oswald timeline, and you will get a plethora of them show up. And, of course, you have to look and see where the sources are coming from, to make sure that they're all there. I would also recommend John Armstrong's book. What is it, Doug?
Harvey and Lee.
Harvey and Lee.
I almost said that, but there's so much of the...
There's so much there. It's a detailed chronology of Lee Harvey Oswald and the contradictions that one might find in his official timeline. It's very informative, to see that, where he's supposed to be versus where he actually was.
Yeah. And alleged to
according
have been.
to different sources, like the Warren Commission. And he uses all official, documents like school records and military records and work records, employment records, tax records, known addresses, and all the like. And it's pretty crazy. But I know money's tight. And the book is not cheap, but I'd recommend it, Tim.
Yeah, and I'm with Rob. It's not cheap, but it's a great resource. Man, that book is a great resource. And I do, and for Oswald timeline reasons. I mean, if I'm doing research, right? If I'm researching, writing a podcast or something for the Dallas Action or for here, what was Oswald doing on May 4th? A lot of times you can go to you can go to Harvey and Lee, find May of 63, and you get a pretty good answer. Yeah, for sure.
All right, our last email, Doug, is from another Tim. Only this is Tim the Eugenicist Sweatpants.
He's back. Hello, Mr. Tim and the sweatpants and the thing.
He says, hey there, guys. Long time no banter. As a JFK assassination expert, movie and literary critic, and high priest in the Church of St. Jim and St. Fletch, a question often shouted at me across car lots or at JFK conferences is, hey, Tim, where'd you get those cute sweatpants? Once and for all, people, 2 words. Thrift store. Try it.
Well, they are
become replete with ketchup and cum stains.
My goodness.
Talking of conferences, there have been a lot of valid criticism in the past about the standard of those concerning the JFK assassination. Okay, all right, I've been listening to this feedback, and this year, and what with the COVID and all, I'm changing things up. Instead of just sitting on the stage in my sweatsuit, eating donuts, reiterating the same old spiel, avoiding people, and shilling my books, I'll be presenting a live-streamed play, written by me, of course. This reenacts the key events of the assassination, and will be directed and produced by my good friend Oliver Stone and his brother Roger.
Well,
frankly, I'm surprised they haven't worked together before.
They have. Yeah, they have.
Don't forget their stepbrother, Sly. The highlight is when I don a Stetson and cowboy boots and portray a member of Dallas's hard right in Dealey Plaza in 1963.
Well, at least you're not putting on fucking Superman pajamas and cowboy boots. We've all seen that, and it's not a good look. Not a good look at all.
At the same time, my good lady, Leezy Peasy, pumps my umbrella up and down vigorously.
Oh, boy. This has taken a turn. This has taken a turn.
So if you can, do catch it. There'll be links to buy my books on the live stream. As you know, they justifiably occupy the top 3 places in my list of top 10 JFK assassination texts. Later, Tim the Eugenicist.
They do indeed.
P.S.
Oh,
Doug.
boy. Oh, boy.
Marilyn Monroe's rectum.
Well, you know what? Maybe. I don't know what to say to that, honestly. I don't know what to say to that one, Rob.
Holy shit.
I know. Wow, man. You guys, y'all need a hobby, some of you.
God bless them. I love it.
We got a good crew, don't we, Rob?
We do. So, folks, if you would like your email read and commented on and laughed at on Quick Hits with me and Doug, feel free to send them to quickhitsjfk@gmail.com. And we will read them on the air, comment about them on the air, and laugh at them on the air.
What's the email address again?
Quick Hits at JFK. Hold on. I fucked that up. It's quickhitsjfk@gmail.com.
Quickhitsjfk@gmail.com. We're laughing at you, not with you. Thank you.
You're correct. Holy shit.
Oh, boy. Wow. What a great show, dude. What an awesome show this has been. Ooh. All right. Well, I guess it's about time, Mr. Clark, that we sign off from our dear listeners. Would you like to begin, and I will close this out?
I would.
All right.
Hey, everybody listening, make sure that you are subscribed to this show. That means you get notified as soon as a new episode drops. Don't just search it out. Subscribe. It helps beyond belief with our numbers. So make sure wherever you listen to this podcast, you are subscribed. All you got to do is hit a button. It's really not that hard. Also, be checking out the Lone Gunman from the Vault and the Lone Gunman podcast and auditory from this here very quick hits podcast over on YouTube. And make sure you give me a follow over there on YouTube. That would be great. I'd love to get to 1,000 subscribers someday. It's only been 7 fucking years, and I'm only at like 400 or 500. So if we could get that up to 1,000 so I can monetize it, that'd be great.
Yeah, guys,
fucking
look.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, there's way more than that listening to the show. Come on.
Hit the subscribe button, people. That's all you got to do. Hit the subscribe button. I'm not asking you to buy anything, send me money. Just hit the subscribe button, and you'll be doing us a world of favors.
There you go.
And you can listen to the Lone Gunman podcast on any damn platform you want to, be it YouTube, iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, excuse me, Amazon, whatever the hell. You can say, hey, Alexa, play the Lone Gunman podcast, or hey, Alexa, play Quick Hits. And it should work. It might not. I don't fucking know. I haven't tried it. But I'm pretty sure I signed up for it. So try it and see if it works.
Try it and see.
You can follow me on Twitter at The Lone Gunman 7 and on Facebook, The Lone Gunman Podcast Facebook page. Hit like. Follow me on Twitter. It's that easy. And subscribe, people. God damn it. Hit the subscribe button.
Everywhere.
Doug.
All right. Subscribe. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Guys, you can and should listen to and subscribe to my show, The Dallas Action, presented by Wall Street Window, everywhere you find quality podcasts, historical research and study of the people, places, things, events, and ideas related and connected to the conspiracy that murdered President John F. Kennedy, like Quick Hits right here. Another fine podcast from Drop D Podcast Productions. So for Rob Clark, this is Doug Campbell saying tune in again next time when, at about the halfway mark of my presentation on General Ed Lansdale in Quick Hits number 25, we'll hear the voice in Rob's head say,
are we going to fucking talk about this all fucking day?
Peace, motherfuckers.
We are out.
Are we going to fucking talk about this all fucking day?